Welcome to my interview with Amy, who's had a really, really terrible time with Crohn's. You can follow her at Pumba's Journey. She also wanted me to mention these accounts here that she's bigged up, providing useful information on Crohn's and colitis.
Hi everyone, thanks for tuning in again. Today I'm with my good friend Amy, who I have known since she's been about this high. Amy has really suffered, probably more than most, with Crohn's disease. And I wanted to have a chat with her about her experiences on first diagnosis or first when she started notice things weren't right up until today, where she's looking really, really healthy. Really nice to see her doing so well. Drinks, we're enjoying a lovely cup of tea, and I've got a lovely giraffe, and
I've got
Amy's
Sully.
Sully. And we're joined by Mr. and Mrs. Pooh, which I thought was quite appropriate.
And many dinosaurs.
And many dinosaurs, yeah. So I guess, Amy, let's just kick off. So how did you first discover that you had Crohn's disease? And initially, what was the impact on your life?
So mine is a bit more complicated than your normal Crohn's disease. Normally, as most people are aware, Crohn starts inside you. Mine started outside on my skin. And it was literally like a month after I turned 16, I woke up with pain. And basically mine was the ulcerations and the infection starting at the surface of my skin going down to my bowel rather than inside out.
So was it like a knock-on infection from something that started on the outside that then subsequently became Crohn's, or was it always Crohn's? It just manifested in a different way?
So there was, from day one of getting these infections, there was if it was inside your bowel, we'd say it was Crohn's disease, but it's in your skin, so what do we call it? There was a question of whether it was a skin condition called hidradenitis for many years. And long story short, the infections just kept getting worse and worse and worse, and eventually did reach my bowel. So then it was, well, we're going to say it's Crohn's, but we don't know for sure whether one thing has caused this or this has caused that. And it was a knock-on effect. But yeah, it was a long time ago, 2012.
2012, you're that old.
I know. 12 years this year.
Yeah. I can remember Amy going in and out of hospital all the way through sort of your late teens, all the way through whilst you were at university as well. I mean, most people dealing with university in itself is a challenge, never mind having a chronic disease and being in and out of hospital. Tell us a little bit about how it affected you there.
So yeah, it was really difficult. You know, I've always been like mature for my age, but I definitely had to grow up very quickly. You know, like you say, I was 16 when it started happening, so just finished school, going into A levels, and you're sort of pre-programmed as a child that, you know, you have to do this and this in this particular order, and no one ever says how you're going to do it if things go a bit off rails. Like, you don't get told how to deal with things when you're poorly. So I literally just thought, well, I'm enrolled at college, I've got to carry on doing it. So I mustered through, and it was difficult because when you're meant to be that age, you're meant to go out and have fun with friends, and
Absolutely.
you know, you turn 18, you go out clubbing and drinking, and it did get to the point where, and I understand why it happened, people just stopped inviting me out to things, so I became quite isolated. But I do understand why, because I'd either cancel last minute, or the whole time I'd be out, I'd be in so much pain that I wasn't actually participating. And then it also had an effect on my friends, because they'd then be having to, not have as much fun because they're looking after me. So yeah, it was tough. But
yeah, so you're not only talking about the physical side of this, you know, if any of you guys are watching who are at university at the minute and think about the sorts of things that you're doing on a daily basis and the fun times you're having, how different that is to Amy's experience, and how it's not just the physical effects of it, but we're joined by it's the emotional aspect as well. I presumably those sorts of emotional aspects, they don't just go away after uni either. So you miss out technically on some of that life at university, and then you come out of university, and you've got through that. You've got a degree. It's amazing. After university, then I do remember things starting to go down a little bit more.
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, again, like with how it's affected in personal life. So most people, when they're like, oh yeah, I'm going to go to uni, they go off and live in halls, they move away from their family. And for me, it was at that point where I still didn't have a definite diagnosis, so I didn't actually have a treatment plan either. So it for me, it was just a case of every time something went wrong, I went to hospital. And I remember my surgeon saying, well, yeah, obviously, if you want to go to uni, go to uni, but you should probably stay close because we know you and we know how to help you, which, you know, at the time you thought they did, but it turns out they didn't.
So your choices were basically limited on where you could even go to study.
Yeah. So I had to stay at home. Much to, I'm sure my mum didn't really love that I stayed a bit longer than expected.
Oh, I'm sure she did. Really.
And yeah, so like my friends went off to uni and they had the proper experience, whereas I stayed at home. I drove to uni every day when I was there. So I do, like, I wish I could do it over. I wish I hadn't have gone to uni straight away, so that now that I'm healthy, I could go back and like live in halls and everything. So yeah, it does stay with you. And yeah, it was shortly after, I think it was my final year of uni, that things started to go downhill a lot quicker than they had been. I ended up very, very immobile, almost in a wheelchair, because I couldn't walk from the pain. And yeah, that was the point when it was, okay, what we're doing isn't currently working, so let's explore different options. I went to different specialists. That was when I moved to Southampton, and I got put on what they call biological treatments rather than surgical. So the medications that they use to try and suppress the immune system and the inflammation. Well, I've been on loads of them, and that started in 2017, and I've been on a variation of those ever since.
So basically, your journey's kind of been split in two in a little way, from 2016 first diagnosis up to the end of uni, and then they started trying these other things. Added on top of that is that you can't have penicillin, is that right?
Yeah, no.
So you like to make things complicated for your medical practitioners, don't you? So that, I guess, had a huge impact on what they could treat you with, what they couldn't treat you with.
Yeah, because where mine started as more skin infections, the main treatment for them is penicillin, which I couldn't have. And then when you're getting infection after infection after infection, you become resistant to the antibiotics. So the go-to that I always had then also stopped working. Surgery wasn't working. And then it was around 2017 that I started to notice the problems with my bowels, which I'd never had before. And then it just progressed from there.
And at this point, they still didn't have a specific diagnosis. I know Crohn's and colitis can come in many different forms, but at this point, they still didn't know.
Yeah, at this point, it had been mentioned many, many times. And as much as, when you have Crohn's, you have to have biopsies done of both your skin and your bowel tissue. And mine always came back as abnormal, but not Crohn's abnormal.
Right.
So they were like, well, there's definitely something not right, but we can't actually pinpoint what it is. So it looks like Crohn's, so we'll treat it like Crohn's. And that's the treatment that I went on. And it wasn't actually until 2 years ago that I got, no, you definitely have Crohn's disease now.
Yeah.
Congrats.
So can you talk about the emotional toil of living with a chronic condition?
It's exhausting. Yeah. It is exhausting. Most people wake up and plan what they're going to do for the day, and they don't think, how is this going to affect me tomorrow? When you live with a chronic condition, you've always got in the back of your mind, like with Crohn's or colitis, where is the nearest toilet? do I have enough with me in case something happens? So like with my friends, I have a stoma, so I always have to make sure I've got supplies with me, because you don't want to get caught without them. You can't just go to Tesco and grab a stoma bag.
No.
Or the pharmacy, they don't hold them.
Maybe they should.
They absolutely should.
Yeah.
There should be an emergency kit.
Yeah.
But you always have to have pre-planning. And for me, I don't worry about it so much now, but back when I was really poorly, I literally would have to think, well, if I make myself dinner today, I might not walk tomorrow. So it's little things like that that you don't realize. People assume Crohn's and colitis is just a stomach ache,
Yeah.
but it's not, because it affects literally from, if you think you put food in your mouth, it comes out one end or the other. So it starts at your mouth. So there were days when my tongue and my gums would be so swollen that I couldn't eat. And you get taught as a kid, like, oh, it's important to brush your teeth or else you'll get ulcers and stuff. But you can do all you can, but when you've got a condition that literally affects you from the entrance point to exit point, there is nothing you can do to stop it from flaring up. So every day was a worry of, if I do something today, will I be able to move tomorrow?
Wow.
And like, where the dog's been coming past.
Yeah.
I had to, at one point, we've got a dog walker, we still have her, because he absolutely adores her, but she was my lifeline, because I couldn't get out with him.
He's watching us now.
He's
listening
like,
with intent.
I know you're talking about me.
So presumably as well, you have to be really careful about what you're eating, how you're eating. Are there certain foods that trigger you or that you can't have? Sweet corn.
I mean, there are foods that I probably shouldn't have. Like I say, so it was probably about 2017 that I noticed the problems with my bowels, and that was how I noticed it, that I would eat something and I'd start with really bad stomach pains, and then it would affect your stool, but it would carry on affecting me for days afterwards. And it started off just being greasy food. So like, I mean, the number one I would say is a fried egg. If I have a fried egg, I'm in agony, and I love fried eggs.
Is that the case now?
Yeah.
Still okay.
Yeah. So there are things that you probably shouldn't eat, but I weigh it up as, am I going out tomorrow? No, well, I'll have a curry for dinner.
Wow. So you literally have to, we might just say, oh, can't be bothered cooking, so let's go out for a curry. Whereas for you, you'd have to, well, hang on a minute, what am I doing tomorrow?
Yeah. So
what
if
am I
I
doing
was,
the day after?
So I'm in work tomorrow. If I was thinking I can't be bothered cooking tonight, there's no way I'd have a curry because I'm in work tomorrow.
Yeah.
But yeah, you do learn when you've got Crohn's disease how much food out there is actually inflammatory. Dairy is a big one. Most people who have Crohn's can't do a lot of dairy. I mean, you heard me freaking out about milk.
She made me a cup of tea and she said, do you have milk or sugar? I said, no sugar, just some milk. She says, good job, I bought some milk. I'm like, okay. And she's pouring it out and she's going, bleh, bleh, like,
yeah. Well, I don't do milk anyway.
Oh gosh, so why do I feel bad?
Cheese is a different story. I love cheese. But yeah, if I have too much dairy, I will have like very bad cramping. And like last year when my large intestine was so infected, I was put on what they call the Crohn's elimination diet, which is the most boring diet you can think of.
So go on, give us your typical daily menu on this.
I've never eaten so many bananas in my life. So you were allowed bananas, 1 boiled egg, boiled chicken, mashed potato in the sense of literally just a boiled potato mashed up, no milk, no butter, no oil. You weren't allowed any dairy.
Yeah.
Those were the 4 things I was allowed.
And how long were you on that diet for?
How long I was supposed to be on it for and how long I was on it for were 2 different stories. I was on it for a couple of weeks in hospital. Yeah. It was even more difficult in hospital because all the food is pre-made, and they'd come to me and go, well, this has that in. And so yeah, I've never eaten so many bananas in my life. But yeah, that it's tough because even that, you can't just go out for a meal. You have to think, well, I've got to think about how that's cooked and what that includes. So when your Crohn's is really bad, you are so restricted to what you can and can't eat.
And you've touched on being in hospital a couple of times. Do you have a running tally of how many days you've actually spent? Do you have any idea? A month? I mean,
overall, no. However, this is the first year in 5 years that I have not been in hospital at this date. My longest stay was 190 days.
Yeah.
That was my longest.
So I've not known Amy out of hospital in any summer, really.
It's my summer holiday.
Yeah, her summer holiday.
It was my summer holiday every year for the last 5 years.
Yeah, it's just absolutely horrendous. And I'm getting hate. Was it last year you ended up in intensive care with it?
It was, yeah.
So tell us a bit about why that was, and hopefully the other side of it. Now here you are.
Yeah, so
it was very low. So now,
yeah. So last year was probably the toughest year that I've had. I originally went into hospital with skin infections. And whilst I was in hospital, I did start suffering with loose stool and stomach cramps. But when you're on antibiotics, that is a side effect of them. So it was just equally, it was the doctors saying it, but also me from personal experience of, well, when I'm on antibiotics, this happens. And then I came home and it carried on, and I wasn't on the antibiotics, and it was, well, you've been on bland hospital food, now you're cooking whatever you want, so maybe that's it. And then it started to go from stomach pain about an hour after I ate to whilst I was eating to then all day every day, but not just, oh yeah, I've got a bit of stomach cramps. I was literally wrapped around the toilet crying from the pain. You know, if I tried to go for a walk with Diesel, the sweat would be dripping off me. And at one point, a police car actually drove past me and they stopped and said, do you need us to take you home? Because I was leant against a wall, like, I think I'm going to pass out. And I was literally only around the corner. And then at that point, I was also getting blood in my stool, which to anyone is an alarm bell. So
when you say stool, I guess you're seeing it in.
Yeah, so I already had the stoma anyway.
Yeah.
And it was, you know, you change
get
the
used
bag
to what you're seeing.
Yeah.
Like we don't check enough. You
you have to. You've got no other choice. You've got to see what you're doing. And it was like, oh, okay, that's red. That shouldn't be red. And it was actually, so my friend got married, and the whole day at the wedding, I was like, oh God, if there's going to be food, am I going to be able to eat it? You know, because my stoma was so active and loose, I was having lots of leaks, so my skin was sore, so I was constantly back and forth to the toilet. And when I got back from the wedding, I was like, you know what, this has been going on for several weeks. I can't just ignore it anymore. So I phoned up my doctor and I was like, just to let you know, I'm coming to A&E, so it'd be quite nice to see you. And I got there and they did their blood test and they went, you're going to have to stay for a few days. I was like, oh, okay, cool, fine, whatever. And I was on for 2 weeks, high dose IV steroids to try and get the inflammation down in my bowel. They do stool samples to measure what they call, it's called calprotectin, and that is inflammation in your gut. And anything above 50 is, yeah, you got a bit of inflammation. And mine was about 20,000. So quite high.
Okay.
And yeah, after 2 weeks, they went, yeah, so it's not responding. So we think the best option is maybe take your colon out. And I was just like, well, that's what you got to do. You got to do it. Because this stomach pain was horrific. But I was very poorly anyway. I didn't realize how poorly I was, because I was like, well, you've said take it out. Let's do it. Let's do it tomorrow.
Just take the pain away.
Yeah. And it was then 6 weeks before they did the surgery that I was in hospital, and I was nil by mouth, wasn't allowed to eat, was on TPN, so nutrition through the veins, as well as the medication, and it still wasn't responding. So I went for surgery, and that's when I ended up in intensive care because of how weak I was. It was a 14-hour surgery to remove my colon. And then, yeah, I spent a week in intensive care. Don't remember any of it. The stories that I've been told were quite amusing, but
Were there any videos?
Thank God, no, that was not permitted. But yeah, I have no recollection to this day
Probably
of
just
some of
as
the
well.
conversations that I was having. And yeah, literally after that week, once I then started to move around, and anyone who's had abdominal surgery will tell you it's a tough recovery because you don't realize how much you use your abdomen. Even things like sneezing and coughing,
Yeah.
the pain. So yeah, it was a tough recovery for physio, several weeks of physio, but it is the best thing I've ever done, hands down. Wish I'd done it years ago.
Yeah. And when did you actually get out of hospital in the end?
July. So yeah, so I initially went in January last year. What's today? So a year last year.
Yeah.
I was in there for a week, for 4 weeks.
Yeah.
Came out for 2 weeks. Went back in at the beginning of April, and then left at the beginning of July.
And this surgery has changed your life?
100%, yeah.
Yeah. So much so you've actually been able to get a job.
Yeah. And if you'd have told me even 2 years ago, let alone 12 years ago, I'd be back to full-time work, I wouldn't have believed you.
And it's great to hear that you've got a couple of holidays booked as well, which is
going
fantastic.
abroad.
So are there any misconceptions about Crohn's disease that you often encounter? And if so, how do you deal with it?
Yeah, I
How do
mean,
you
the
address it?
biggest one is it's just a stomach ache, because it's what people call a hidden disability. It's not something visible. You can't see what it's doing to somebody's inside, so people don't necessarily believe it's as severe as it is. But like I say, it's more than just a stomach ache. If you've had an upset tummy, you might not eat for a day. You'll hydrate, you'll put a hot water bottle on you. With Crohn's and colitis, it can last weeks, it can last months. But it's not just a stomach ache, it's the sweating, it's the feeling like you're going to vomit, but you've got nothing inside to vomit. It's exhausting. You don't realize how. I mean, we're all guilty. When you have a cold, you're tired, you sleep a lot. So imagine your body constantly fighting something. You are drained all the time. Like my friends used to always laugh. They'd phone me and I'd be like, "Oh, I was having a nap," and they're like, "You're just permanently napping." It's like, yeah, but I'm permanently tired. Like I say, it would be a choice of, do I walk my dog or do I cook dinner? Because one of them's going to kill me if I do that.
So again, thinking, most of you who watch this probably know me, and I will go out and I'm doing these runs to raise money. I'm going to the gym. Sat here feeling quite guilty about the fact that I don't give that a second thought.
That's it. When you don't have that experience yourself of being ill, it's the little things. For me, coming out of all of this, it's little things like being able to sit down comfortably. That's a huge thing for me, which most people don't think about. It's being able to walk my dog and not have to come home and have a nap because I'm so exhausted. And things like being able to cook dinner.
Yeah.
I love cooking.
Yeah.
So to be able to stand and make a meal rather than whack something in the microwave that's not good for you, and it's little things like that.
I can remember whenever you were not in hospital and you just had to sort of always sat on one side. You couldn't sit.
No.
Straight. If you sat,
couldn't sit
normally, like you were in agony. And these are just such everyday things we take for granted that Amy struggled with, for a decade, more than a decade.
Yeah.
So to see you sat like this, like, it does make my heart sing, honestly.
I mean, me, I like my history and castles and museums and stuff. So to not be able to go out doing things that I enjoy was tough. Like you become a prisoner in your own home. Whereas now I can go out and do whatever I want, and I take Diesel with me and we're gone for hours and hours, and he can keep going. It's me who gets tired. But it's the little things that give you your life back. I went, so one of the first things that I did about a month after coming out of hospital, and it still makes me smile to think about, went to the cinema and I sat and watched a film, and I've not been able to do that for years. And
Yeah.
it's just little things like that,
Yeah,
you know.
just sit there for a couple of hours and be comfortable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I sat there with my bag of sweets thinking, should I be eating this? I don't know. But hey, I'm at the cinema.
And you're working now, which is brilliant. So how do you handle the work responsibilities with the challenges of Crohn's? Are they understanding?
Yeah, so I'm an open book. I will talk about my health to strangers. I don't care. So whenever I've had quite a few jobs since getting poorly, and I always, from the minute I put the application in, say, yes, I do have a disability. I've got long-term health condition. I'll always mention it in the interview so that it is known. But I have to say, so I started a new job in November, and this employer has been amazing. You know, they couldn't do more for me. It's the only job that I've ever had where before starting, occupational health have got involved and gone, okay, what do you need?
Brilliant.
So I said to them, well, you know, the understanding that I might go to the toilet a bit more than the normal person does. And, you know, you go to the toilet for a wee, it's only a couple of minutes. I might be gone for a little bit longer. And they're like, oh, yeah, no, that's absolutely fine. Just, you know, make sure you let someone know that that's what you're doing, because you don't want to take the mick out of people. But equally, things like I need a locker to be able to make sure I've got supplies with me for my stoma if anything happens, a spare change of clothes. And they've given me my own locker. There's showers for me to use. The disabled toilets, they said, well, what do you need? Because we don't have anyone that has a stoma. So what do you need? And I said, well, if there's a table or a shelf, that would be great, because you've got so many things, you don't want to be putting them on the floor.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, we don't have that at the moment, but we'll put a request in. And they honestly, they can't do enough for me. It's fantastic.
Really brilliant to hear. And I hope more workplaces will take a leaf out of her employer and do the same, because those little things can make such a huge difference. How's your perspective on life changed since your diagnosis? And are there any positive aspects that have emerged through your journey?
I think now that I can label it as something, people are a lot more understanding. You know, family and friends, they've always, you know, sympathized with me, but now that they can equally themselves go and Google, well, what is this and how does it affect somebody? It has made a huge difference. Like the understanding that people have when I say I'm struggling today, they know, oh, actually, she's not just using it as an excuse. Because, like I say, you can't see what's going on inside. Yeah. So yeah, having the diagnosis has definitely helped, and equally for my own mentality, you know, it's been so difficult to not know what's wrong with you. To, you know, for what, I mean, what year are we in now? 24. So yeah, 2012 to 2022, to not know what was wrong with me, you get to that point where, you know, it affects your mental health. I didn't know if I was ever going to be better. You know, I didn't know if I was going to be able to look to the future. So now I can actually go, well, like we were discussing, I'm 28 this year. Oh, I can start dating and look at, you know,
the mental
doing things in the future that I couldn't have imagined 5 years ago. Or my friends are having babies. I didn't think that was in the cards for me. Whereas now I know, well, I know that I'm okay now, so I can start looking at things like that. And
the mental resilience to get through not knowing, you know, at least if you know, well, we're going to do this, this, and this, and you will have this result. You didn't have that.
Yeah, and you know, we put all of our faith and trust in doctors, and when you've got not just one or two doctors, but I've had, you know, over 10 different specialists go, we don't know what's wrong with you, we don't know how to help you. And this is people who've been in the profession for 30-40 years. So for them to say we don't know, you feel a bit alien. You're like, I can't be the only person in the world that is suffering like this.
Anyone else with the same undiagnosis could just have given up.
Yeah.
But you never did, because Yes.
Came close.
Yeah, well, yeah, understandably so.
But yeah, I always try and have a positive spin on everything. So I'm glad I've been through what I've been through, because I mean, you mentioned I've got my Instagram page. Like I am that person that when you're in hospital, I probably listen a bit too much to what's going on. So if
she could write a book, in fact, you should write a book.
I mean, there's some horror stories, honestly. But I will always go out of my way to help somebody else, because I don't want anyone to feel the way I felt, especially like since COVID. Honestly, people have become a lot more open about talking about problems, especially when it comes to your guts, because at the end of the day, everyone poos. Some people do it differently. My dog does it. Babies do it. You've got pets, they all do it.
Yeah.
You can walk down the street and a bird will poo on your head. So everyone does it, and it's literally only in the last few years that people have become really comfortable to talk about it. So when I was 18 when I got my colostomy bag, and I never met anyone with a colostomy bag. It wasn't spoken about, didn't understand it. So I've always had that, well, if I'm in hospital and there's somebody who's got questions or worries, I will be there to help them. And I'm getting emotional.
Oh, no. So Amy's got this amazing Instagram account. So I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about it. I will write it down as well, because it's got extra E's in it or something like that.
Yeah, it does. It's not spelled normally.
But if you want to go and follow Amy's journey, or in fact, let me shut up and let Amy tell you about her account and what she hopes to do with it.
Yeah, so my Instagram page is called Pumba's Journey, because that is the name of my stoma. Anyone who watches The Lion King will know that Pumba is a warthog that farts and smells. So that's exactly what my stoma is. It's just something to be a bit light-hearted about, you know. Like you say, if people are afraid of what they don't understand, and they are a hell of a lot more common than you realize, because people don't advertise it. My friend, I was telling you, my friend's child has so many questions they want to ask me, and she's like, oh, that's inappropriate. But I'm ask away, because you're not gonna know unless you ask the questions. So it's a little lighthearted to show what living day to day with a stoma is. As somebody, you know, I am 28 this year, but I have had a stoma for near 10 years this year, in a various shape or form. I've only had my ileostomy for a year. But it's just to make it a bit more normal and not something to be afraid of. And yeah, try and be active on it. I'm not great with social media. I don't really.
You'll have to be now, because there's going to be all these more followers.
But yeah, can I give a little shout out to some pages?
You absolutely can.
So
please.
yeah, so if anyone has any questions about people with Crohn's disease, you've got Mr. Colitis Crohn's?
Mr.
Or Crohn's
colitis.
I never remember which way around it is.
I'll write these all down in the blurb.
He is awesome.
Yeah.
And you've got people, so I follow a lady called Paloma the Stoma, her stoma being called Paloma. She's hilarious. She regularly dresses up in a poo outfit and dances around. She's awesome. And then you've got Emma's Journey. She is one of the most resilient people you will ever know.
Second to you.
Wow. I honestly, what I've been through in comparison to her is nothing. But they all, no matter what they've been through, they have such a positive outlook. And everybody in the Crohn's community, the stoma community, we all look out for each other. You know, I had some pain the other week, and I was like, oh my God, what's wrong? Have I got a hernia? I don't know what's going on. And I asked the question on Instagram, and so many people were like, oh, this is what you could do. You know, something I haven't experienced before since having a stoma. And 10 years ago, I wouldn't have had that.
None of this. Yeah.
So it is amazing. And like I say, it's more than just a stomach ache. Chances are, you know, somebody who's got a bowel problem in some form or the other, whether it's Crohn's, whether it's IBS. You know, anyone who's watching TV at the moment, you've got Adele on Dancing on Ice, who had bowel cancer. So bowel problems are far more common than you think, It's just because it's poo, people don't talk about it.
Absolutely. Well, we've talked now for 35 minutes about
it is a poo conversation.
So it's probably time to sort of wrap it up. I'm sure Amy would be happy to answer any of your questions. Find her on Instagram, shoot her a message. You can see how open she is about talking about these things. So please do that. But thank you ever so much, Amy, for talking to me today. It has been emotional, but again, you are one of the most inspirational, resilient people I'm getting emotional now, that I've ever met, and I'm pleased to be a part of your journey and to supporting you moving forward.
And good luck with the marathons. Yeah,
thank you. All right,
one down. How many to go?
London in April, and then an ultra marathon in May.
Just thinking about that makes me tired. So no.
As a final thought, whenever I am struggling on my runs, whenever I've struggled with anything really, I've had various injuries throughout my training, and it bloody hurts. It does. It's hard. Sometimes I don't want to go and I don't want to give up, but I just think, come on, Helen. And it's always Amy who comes to mind. About what she's been through and how she didn't choose this. I'm out here running and I've got a sore knee or whatever it is, but that's my choice. She didn't get to choose that, and it's people with strength like hers that push me through and get me to the end of those long runs. So as well as Amy's Instagram and those accounts, I'll stick a link as well to the fundraising page. So if you want to drop some pennies in the pot for Crohn's and Colitis UK, that's very much appreciated. Thanks for watching, and follow our journeys, and stand by for the next video at some point. I'm hoping to speak to a few more people around Crohn's and colitis, get their stories and share them with you as to why we're supporting this great charity. Thank you.